Hi everyone! So today I'm going to be talking about psychology and in specific chapters 3 and 4. We'll start with chapter 3, which is consciousness and the two-track mind. Consciousness is defined as your awareness of yourself. There are some guys called evolutionary psychologists who are psychologists that study evolution, and they believe that consciousness has a reproductive advantage because it teaches you about consequences and how to anticipate other people's behavior. Cognitive neuroscience is the study of the brain and its mental processes. So cognitive is thinking and neuro is brain, so therefore brain and mental processes, which is thinking. And sometimes your brain processes things using dual processing, which is the two-track mind, which is basically conscious and unconscious thoughts. And most of your brain work is done on the unconscious side. And some of the unconscious things are perception, memory, and language. People also have the ability to selectively attend and selectively inattend to things. For example, here you're selectively attending to the book and you're selectively inattending to the TV screen or other people talking. The cocktail party effect is being able to differentiate one voice out from all the others even when you're around places. Inattentional blindness is when you're focusing on something so important that you don't notice other things. For example, when you're throwing a basketball but you don't notice some weird thing go past you due to throwing the basketball. Some people have change blindness, which would be seeing something and not noticing when it changed. For example, this guy is wearing a blue shirt and then he's wearing a red shirt, but some people might not notice it. And sometimes change deafness happens too. For example, you might be saying some stuff and you might say potato in the middle of a sentence, but the other person doesn't notice because they have change deafness. And now we're going to talk about sleep. So when you sleep, you're in a circadian rhythm, which is a 24-hour clock, which is basically your body's natural clock. There are 5 sleep stages, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, of course. And they gradually get deeper as you sleep. And this is the average sketch of someone's nightly sleep patterns, with the lowest being 5. And it takes about 90 minutes to get through the 5 sleep stages. Alpha waves are created just before you go to sleep. Theta waves are created in stages 1 to 2, and delta waves are created in stages 3 to 4. Stage 5 contains beta waves, which occurs during REM sleep. REM, which stands for rapid eye movement, is basically when you're dreaming. It's also called paradoxical sleep because you're not moving as you're dreaming. Some theories on sleep are that it protects you, you can recover from your life, and you remember things better. It also helps you grow. There are many sleep disorders, such as insomnia, which is not being able to sleep, narcolepsy, which is falling asleep at random times in random places, and sleep apnea, which is the cessation of breathing during sleeping. Some children may have some things like night terrors, sleepwalking, or sleep talking. Night terrors and sleepwalking only happen during stage 4 sleep. So when we sleep, we have things called dreams. Freud suggested that dreams were composed of manifest and latent content, where manifest is the storyline and latent is the hidden meaning behind the dreams. Dreams typically have negative feelings, failure, and sex in them. Freud suggested that dreams were a psychic valve to fulfill your wishes. Another theory is that dreams process information that's taken in during the day. Dreams also help provide the sleeping brain with stimulation to preserve the neural pathways. The activation synthesis theory suggests that because the brain engages in a lot of random neural activity, the dreams make sense of this activity by interpreting them. Some people argue that we dream so that our brain can mature and develop. REM rebound is the act of quickly returning to REM sleep or dream sleep after falling asleep due to deprivation of sleep. Hypnosis is a social interaction where a hypnotist suggests to a subject that certain perceptions or behaviors will spontaneously occur. Hypnotists can perform post-hypnotic suggestions which occur even after the hypnotism stops. They can also induce post-hypnotic amnesia where the patient forgets what happens after the hypnotism. Hypnotism can be explained by things like the social influence theory, which believes that hypnotists are actors, and the divided conscious theory, which thinks of the divided consciousness, like unconscious and conscious. And now we're going to talk about drugs. Well, psychoactive drugs. Tolerance is the continued use of psychoactive drugs, which lessens their effects over time. Withdrawal would be stopping the use of a drug, but having undesirable bodily effects, which is basically dependence on a drug, and all of those make addiction. There are 3 different kinds of drugs: depressants, stimulants, and hallucinogens. Depressants are drugs that reduce neural activity and kind of slow bodily functions, and they include alcohol, barbiturates, and opiates. Stimulants are drugs that excite neural activity and speed up bodily functions. Examples of stimulants are caffeine, nicotine, cocaine, and ecstasy. Hallucinogens are drugs that produce hallucinations, and some examples are LSD and THC, which is marijuana. A near-death experience is a close passage death where people report moving through a dark tunnel and being like, whoa. It's the same experience as being under some hallucinogenic drugs. Now we're going to start Chapter 4, Nature, Nurture, and Human Diversity. Behavior geneticists study our differences and weigh the relative effects of hereditary and environmental effects on people. We are made of cells, which are in turn made of chromosomes containing DNA. DNA consists of genes that make proteins to determine our development. We have a human genome, which is a set of complete instructions for making us. Punnett squares can be used to predict an outcome of a crossbreeding experiment. Twin studies are typically used to compare hereditary and environmental effects. Twins are usually separated and then raised in different environments to see whether environment has more of an effect or genetics has more of an effect on them. Typically, kids are more like their biological relatives versus their adopted relatives. However, it's been shown that parenting has an effect on biological children and adopted children. Temperament is a person's stable emotional reactivity and intensity, whereas heritability is a trait that can be mathematically estimated using twin and adoption studies. Nature versus nurture is a question of whether nature fixes us more or nurture fixes us more. Molecular genetics studies genes at a molecular level. Evolutionary psychology studies why we as humans are alike. They theorize that sometimes we are alike because of natural selection, which is an evolutionary process where adaptive traits are passed on to other generations because these traits help you survive. Some biologists have used artificial selection to artificially rear and domesticate wild foxes. This is called selective mating. Now we're going to talk about sexuality. In psychology, gender is defined as biologically and socially influenced characteristics by how people individuate males and females. Males and females have different selections when mating due to having differences in sexuality, of course. One question is, do parents influence us more or do peers influence us more? Studies have shown that babies raised in an enriched environment will develop more neural connections versus babies raised in a non-enriched environment. Culture is the composed behaviors, ideas, attitudes, values, and traditions shared by a group and then transmitted from one generation to the next. Every culture has its own norms, rules for accepted and expected behavior. For example, norms in Japan are going to be different from norms in America. Japan is an individualist culture, whereas America is a collectivist culture. An individualist culture nurtures an individual's personal identity, whereas a collectivist culture favors the group identity. Regardless of culture, men and women have many various differences. For example, girls tend to be about 70% fatter than guys, whereas guys are more prone to having psychological disorders. Men are also much more likely to be more aggressive and want more social dominance than women are. Women and men are differentiated because women have two X chromosomes and men have an X and a Y chromosome. Gender roles are an expectation of how men and women are supposed to behave. Gender identity is how a person views themselves in terms of gender. The social learning theory proposes that we learn gender behavior by observing and imitating. The gender schema theory proposes that we learn gender through cognition. We adjust our behavior according to how our culture determines how a male or a female should act. And that's all for my presentation. Now, thank you so much for watching, and bye!